Hello everyone, this is FIDE Master Viktor Neustroev and welcome to my 69th webinar that is called Attack on the Most Secured Spot. Today we have a few new attendees. So let me introduce myself first. I'm a FIDE Master. My current rating, my FIDE ELO is 2252. So the maximum was 2305. I conduct these webinars. They are free. I conduct them every Sunday at this time it's 2 p.m. London time, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or, so for those who are from Moscow, it's 5 p.m. Moscow time. Please let me know if everything works properly. Today, everything should be fine because my microphone is good. So the camera is working, and I'm sure you can see my screen. Okay, yes. Please let me know if you can. Okay, everything is okay, fine. So for those who attend this webinar for the first time, please introduce yourself. Just tell me which country are you from and what's your ELO. It can be either FIDE ELO or just chess.com ELO. Okay, so from Iran, from Poland. I see. Spain, Germany. Antonio, where are you from? What's the name of this country? Oh, Marcel. So you can't hear me. What's wrong? What do you think? So I get my microphone closer. It's England. Okay. So everything should work properly, actually. Today we have just a few attendees. Actually, 22 people came. I don't know why. I expected at least maybe 40 people coming. But anyway, it's fine. Okay. So what are we going to do today? We are going to talk about such kind of attack that your opponent is likely to blunder. However, before we start with the webinar, let me demonstrate some helpful resources. Okay, so for example, this is my profile on chess.com, so you may send me a friend request or subscribe to it. This is the link. So in such a case, you won't miss any my new announcements and articles. This is our educational group on tricks of chess. So I'm conducting a tournament. And for example, this is our first round, pairings of the first round. So nicknames of guys who participate here. And tomorrow I'm going to publish the results of the first round and the pairings for the second round. So guys who participate in this tournament, don't forget that today, so Sunday, is the last game, is the last day to play the game of the first round. Also, I publish some helpful resources, some helpful information, articles in this in this group. So, and for example, if you can't attend the webinar, you can just watch the recording. You can find it here or directly on my YouTube channel. This is the link to my So as for the results, please, everyone who participates in the tournament, after you play the game, please send me an email, only email. So don't send on it on Instagram, not on chess.com, only email, because I'm going to transfer these emails to my assistant who will check them. And then on Monday morning, we talk to him and try to detect cheaters and so on. Okay. So, and this is my YouTube channel. So this is the link. So currently, oh wait, it's webinar 69. And if you like my webinars, there is a playlist with my other webinars that you can watch, for example, if you miss it. Fine. And one more thing, the final. This is my website where you can find some information about me. You can also find my courses. I created several chess courses. Some of them are devoted to tactics, some to openings, and of course I have 4 courses devoted to endgames. They are currently in a bundle. So I think a month ago I made a sale on this bundle. Now it comes without a sale. So, actually, there is a kind of a sale, but it's only 40% discount. The attendees of one of my webinars were able to get it with 70% discount. Anyway, my blog can be helpful, I'm sure. And after the webinar, you will be redirected to this page, and maybe you will read my latest article about intuitive sacrifice. Okay, fine. Let me close it, and let's get back to our webinar today. Okay, here we are. I see that everything works. You can see the board, and we are going to start with the game between Konstantin Sakaev and Rinat Jumabayev. So Konstantin Sakaev was a really good Russian grandmaster. Now he is known as a coach, more than a coach, but of course he participates in tournaments. For example, 1 year ago, we both were playing in one tournament. It was here in Novosibirsk. It was one of the Grand Prix stages. It was a rapid tournament. Something like a Grand Prix of Russia, something like that. One of the stages. And I played well. However, I slightly decreased my rating. However, who cares? Okay. So guys who watch my webinar on YouTube, I kindly recommend you to join it using the link in the description. Fine. So what do I mean when I say attack on the most secured spot? Sometimes when you play the game, your opponent defends a certain square, and he believes that you can't get your piece there, you can't attack this square because it's totally under their control. But during the game, he sometimes forgets about this square. It's still protected by several of his pieces or his pawns, but due to the tactical opportunities in this position, in a certain position, you may occupy it. And in such a case, it will be unfavorable for your opponent to capture your piece located at that square. So sounds difficult, but let me explain by the example of this game. So here Konstantin Sakaev played with white pieces. It was d4, knight f6, knight f3, e6, c4, b6. So it's Queen's Indian defense. And he chose the plan with g3, similar to Catalan. Bishop a6, with the idea to play d5 and undermine the c4 pawn and open the diagonal for the bishop. So here one of the best moves is queen a4. We are not only putting the pressure on this bishop on a6, but also pin the d pawn. Bishop b7. Well, queen a4 is mainly a useless move. So that's why black allowed themselves to spend tempo on another bishop move. Bishop g2. c5 undermining the center. So if you can, in such positions, I recommend playing d5, but in this position it's just a pawn blunder. So maybe castle or yeah, maybe castle e3 doesn't work, or d takes c5 like it was played in this game. Bishop c5, castle, castle, knight c3, bishop goes to e7, bishop f4, with the idea to occupy the d6 square, so probably rook d1 and bishop d6 after that. Knight h5. So I don't think this is a good move. I definitely understand the idea to chase the bishop, to force the bishop to move to a bad position. Actually, 3 is not so bad, but the problem is that the knight goes to the edge of the board, and black has to spend the temper moving it back, while the bishop is okay on e3. Of course, it's better on f4, but it's still okay on e3. d6, rook d1, and this is where I believe black made another mistake. Something like h6 could make sense, then maybe knight d7 immediately, but they played a6. And this is how they weakened the b6 square. White reacted with queen b3. The queen has nothing to do on e4, but on b3 it attacks the pawn at least. Now it's difficult to suggest anything for black except knight d7 or knight d7. It's the only knight that can go to that place. Maybe queen c8 looks good, with the idea just to sacrifice the pawn. So like that, then knight d7 with a tempo. However, queen retreats. Black has some initiative, but it's not enough to compensate the pawn loss. That's why black played the logical move, knight d7. Now I want to ask you, how would you play in this position? As white, of course. Okay, Rudy suggests knight e4. No, I see. Knight a4, you want to capture on b6. It's obvious. Okay, chess amateur. Knight a4 as well. Okay, anything else? Tomasz. Okay, Tomasz, can you please remind you what's your FIDE ILO? Okay. 800? What's the idea of c5? Please explain. Don't you think that you just blunder a pawn with such a move? Okay. Bishop b6, but bishop b6, queen takes b6. It's just a blunder. Okay, I see. So knight a4, bishop b6 is a blunder. It's obvious. Knight a4 is a move that definitely deserves attention. Let's analyze it. So you play knight a4, threatening to take on b6. What can I do? Oh, I was thinking about knight c5 in this position, but looks like it's a blunder because of knight takes knight, the d pawn is pinned, and if the b pawn takes, the bishop is hanging, and then the queen successfully escapes. So it's not a good move. What else can be played? b5 probably, but then c takes b5, a takes b5, queen takes b5. I was originally thinking about this move that allows to capture the pawn in e2, but you see, the knight is on the edge of the board and is hanging. So that's why it's in white favor, and b5 is a blunder. Okay. Okay, Rudy suggests bishop takes f3. Yeah, bishop takes f3 with the idea to play rook b8. I can say that why not to play rook b8 immediately and bishop f3 can be played later. For example, so what? If bishop captures, attacking the queen, We can do knight takes. If queen takes, if knight takes, we play bishop f3. Bishop takes f3. Oh, actually, queen takes f3. Yeah. So if bishop takes f3 in this position, just rook takes on b6 with a temper, and then we have enough time to move our knight back to f6. If queen f6, queen f3 in this position, then I believe queen takes b6, queen takes h5, and queen takes b2. And looks like black is fine. The number of pawns is equal, c4 is a weakness, and moreover, we have to play the end, probably the end game with bishops of opposite color. That is likely to be a draw. So bishop b6 doesn't work. What about knight b6 in this position? If so, then we can play bishop f3 immediately. Bishop takes f3. Then knight b6. So this knight is hanging. And then I don't know what exactly they can do. I was thinking about capturing. No, it looks like we are still down a pawn as black. Knight d5 maybe? What do you think? Knight d5? Yeah, knight d5, right. So queen has to move. If queen moves to a3, after knight takes here, white has to capture with the pawns. And this position looks fine. Oh, because of bishop f6 on the next move, probably e3 is a weakness. Moreover, this is the position with bishops of opposite color, which is fine for black, because even without a pawn, in the end game, black can draw the game. If queen captures on e3, of course, it's the b2 pawn is hanging. And the position is approximately equal. So looks like after rook b8, the b6 pawn is not hanging. That's why I don't understand the idea of knight a4. So it's not really an attacking move, because after this move, if, for example, white continues something like that, black can definitely play this move. Can they? Yes, I think they can. If knight c5, b takes c5, bishop takes c5, and in this position, maybe bishop f4 works. Bishop f3, no. Okay, maybe I'm mistaken here. So rook c1, first probably queen c7 has to be played, and knight c5 on the next move. That should be fine. So knight a4 is not a good move in this position. What else was suggested? a4 with a pawn. I don't understand it at all. I don't think it makes any sense. So I noticed that Tomasz suggested c5 in this position. So this move, what you guys think about this option? What can you say about c5? Is it good or not? Okay, so too many defenders. Yes, the c5 is the most secured square in this position. And this is where we attack. Here, Radoslav is absolutely correct. We have two pins. So first of all, this queen. Yeah, first of all, this queen. Wait, why can't I draw the arrow? Yeah, queen pins the b pawn. Rook here creates another pin. That's why c5 can be played. And then you realize that in case of the b pawn taken, then the bishop is hanging. It's obvious. If knight is hanging, or if knight takes, then bishop takes, and actually the bishop cannot be captured. Oh, they can probably do this, but in such a case, we can play either bishop b6 first, or yeah, I think bishop b6 is the best move. But this move works as well. And after b takes c5, we can decide what to capture, this rook or maybe the knight on the edge of the board, which I prefer more. So the other option is to attack on c5. However, even if they capture on c5 with the d pawn, we can take the advantage of this pin. What do you think? How can we do that? Knight e5? Okay, knight e5, and then if bishop takes on g2, what then? Okay, so let's calculate the line together. Knight comes to e5, bishop takes g2, because knight e5 is attacking two pieces, the bishop and this knight on d7. So bishop takes g2, then what? Rook captures d7, maybe. Then he plays queen e8. What do you think white should do to continue? Take the bishop back. You mean the g2 bishop? Yes, so that makes sense. But if we play like that, oh, wait a sec. So I'll show you. Knight e5, bishop takes g2, rook takes d7, attacking the queen. Queen goes to e8. Then we capture on g2. Then he just played bishop f6. This is how black is attacking the knight standing on e5. If knight moves, then the rook is hanging on d7. So looks like this is how black equalizes. Of course, you can improve. Knight e5, bishop g2, rook d7, queen e8, and here you first may take the bishop on d7. This is how you trade your rook for two minor pieces, and then you take on g2. So rook versus rook and pawn versus two minor pieces, and white has two minor pieces, black has rook and pawn, which is of course in white favor, and yes, it improves white's position, so that's why it works. But you can play actually better. Knight e5, bishop g2, and just knight takes d7, threatening to take on f8, and with knight f6 check, what opens the attack on the queen. Moreover, actually, if the bishop is on g2, we can capture it. For example, if he plays rook e8, we just capture the bishop and gain an extra piece. Yes, so knight takes d7 is the best option. That's right. So looks like d takes c5 doesn't work. That's why c5 was a good tactical strike that allowed white to get some positional advantage. Okay, Radoslav, I don't agree with you about knight f6. I'll show you. So d takes c5, knight e5, bishop g2, knight takes d7, so rook e8. And in this position, knight f6 is not so good, actually. Oh, yes, knight f6 is actually good. Looks like you are right in this position. So we can capture the bishop and get an extra piece, but at the same time, what if we just play knight f6, trade our rook and knight for a queen, and then play king g2? Looks like black doesn't really have any intermediate moves. Right, knight f6 is good. So let's go back. Well, knight f6 is good, yes, as long as the queen remains on d8. But maybe to capture the rook on f8 is better. So c5 was played. This pawn cannot be captured. It leads to a better position for white. So what do you think black should do instead? Looks like this move was blundered by such a strong player like Rinat Jumabayev. So what to play? d5, that's right. d5 was played on the board. But let's go back. Please look at this position. So every time c5 was quite supported. So you see the b pawn, the d pawn, the bishop here, the knight. So 4 defenders. And black didn't really calculate c5 moves because he was sure that with 4 defenders, it's enough to cover the square and prevent any tactical strikes with this move. So that was his mistake. Before this position arose, he was thinking that it's enough material to control the c5 square, and he shouldn't no longer calculate this c4, c5 tactical strike. And that's why he forgot about this square, which typically happens even in grandmasters games. No, and of course in almost every club players games. So he was controlling this square, but then he absolutely forgot, and that's why white could use this tactical strike. So what else I want you to notice? Here the knight is on the edge of the board. If it was on f6, then c5 wouldn't work, because after d takes c5, knight e5 is not actually winning anything, because the knight on d7 will be protected by the f knight. This is another important thing. Okay, so let's go back. No, that move wasn't played on the board. So c5, d5. Of course, c takes b6. We just gain a pawn. Knight comes back. Rook ac1. Rook ac8. What do you think white plan should be? What would you do if you were white? Open up the queen side. What? Knight d5? No, Rudy, d5 is well supported. So knight d5, at least pawn captures d5, and I don't really see what you achieved. Knight a4 in this position, Radoslav. This is what you suggest. What's the idea of knight a4? Just to hold the b6 pawn or what? Bishop f4 with the idea to get to c7. That makes sense. But if you play bishop f4 right now, you blunder on b6. So if you play knight a4 first. No, actually, Konstantin Sakaev played knight a4. So another good move in this position is bishop d4 with the idea to play knight e5, and then knight takes knight. This is how the bishop can potentially get to c7. However, bishop d4 is not the best option. I believe knight e4 played by Konstantin Sakaev is better. However, the idea of this move was not to hold the b6 pawn. here, after white captured on b6, they realized that the b6 pawn will be lost anyway, and they shouldn't do everything to save it, but they should let black capture that pawn and at the same time get the advantage. Either coordinate their pieces or force enemy pieces to bad positions, maybe slightly change the pawn structure of black. So I was conducting a class to one of my students, and we also were analyzing this position. So rook c1 wasn't played, and he played bishop d4. I reacted with this move. He did this with the idea to protect on b6. I played bishop c6. No, wait. No, sorry. I played rook c8. He played knight e5. And here knight c5 was the best move. I played bishop c5, which is also fine. He captured on d7. I did this. He played this move. I take and rook d4. So this is another interesting position. Then I played this move. What do you think white should do in this position? So looks like white has to give up the pawn on b6, but how to take the advantage of it? b7, rook c7. b7 is actually what he played in the game. Rook b4 was played immediately after b7. I don't believe there is a big difference between these moves. Rook c1 is even a blunder, unfortunately. Rook c1, for example, bishop a4. So then rook c8, bishop takes b3. No, I don't believe it works. So Radoslav again is correct. No, of course it's not rook h4, but it's e4. What's the idea of this move? This is how white can make the d5 pawn an isolated pawn and then later take the advantage of it, because all white pieces are focused on this square. So for example, they take, queen takes, then for example, queen takes b6. Yeah, queen b6. Then rook b4 first, queen c5. So the knight is not hanging because the rook is. And it takes d5. It takes d5 and something like that. So in this position, of course, the bishop on g2 that is attacking on d5 is much better than the knight. And d5 is probably a weakness. No, is likely to be a weakness. So maybe something like that gonna be played. Then knight c4 is a mistake. Just either a bishop d5 or rook d5. So something else should be played, but it's obvious that white is better in this position. Okay, let's go back. So this is what happened when we played and we were discussing this position. Let's now go back to the game. Rook ac1, rook ac8, knight a4, bishop c6. Now, again, I want you to find the best move that white played. What do you think this move was? b7. b7, rook c7, for example. What's the idea of b7? Because the pawn will be lost. Knight c5. What's the idea of knight c5? So let's say knight c5, maybe bishop b5 works. What do you think? Okay, okay, please, Anusha, please explain the idea of playing knight d4 in this position. So, if speaking about knight c5, I think what can be played? Maybe this move. Oh, no. This move. They capture, bishop captures, rook captures, and then maybe something like that? No. Something like that. And then the pawn dies. No, if speaking about b7, just rook c7, and I don't know how to continue because this pawn gonna be lost. So actually, the best move here was suggested by Anusha. It's knight b4. No, maybe it's not the best move, but it's definitely one of the best options here. Who can explain what's the idea of this move? Of course, we assume black to capture on a4, queen a4, and then they take on b6. Right? With their queen, right? So what can you say about that position? Yeah, here Radoslav is correct. It's everything about the c6 square. I'm not sure if there can be a discovered attack, because I can't find a good spot for the knight to move to. So bishop a4, queen a4, rook c1, rook takes c1, queen b6. Yeah, so where to play with the discovered attack? Because if you do something like that, which naturally looks good, then bishop c5, for example. And what did you achieve? I don't think much. So here we control the c6 square, and this is the most important thing. No, knight e7 is in that position is just a check that is not doing much. Come on, guys. Knight e6, just queen e6. Knight e6 is not a discovered attack. Mm-hmm. So rook takes. But the queen is hanging. So then what? Queen a3? Maybe knight e7 first, king h8, and then queen a3. What can you say about this position? I think it's okay, because... So let's calculate the material. Now it's equal. No, let's say knight fd7, for example. You see, the knight on e7 is actually trapped. For example, b4. Come on, just queen d6 is enough. So you take, I capture here. And what? No, that's not a good idea. Okay, check first, and then take with a rook. But is there any difference? I just move the queen and try to capture your e7. Okay, fine. So there was no difference. And of course, there were several moves that were good, but Konstantin Sakaev decided not to calculate the lines and he played knight b3. The queen is under the attack, and the attack cannot be blocked with the bishop. There are only two moves, b7 and b5 with their queen. So queen b7, for example, looks fine, but we control the c6 square, so we may play queen c6 and offer another trade. And now if he takes, our rook penetrates into the enemy camp, which is fine for us. And then we attack the a6. In the game, it was played queen b5, queen takes queen, a takes b5, and knight d4. So the b pawn is hanging, and if they play b4, we can play knight c6. What do you think black should do in this position? Rook a8? Yes, exactly, rook a8. If knight b5, just rook a2, and black is fine. So we probably have to play a3. And then they play b4. You may say, okay, what's the problem? We may fork them. But if we fork them, what do you think black can do? No, rook c8 is a blunder, knight e7 is a check and the fork, of course, and moreover, the rook on c1 is protected. So, yes, here, yes, Rudy is correct. B takes a3, knight e7 check, king f8. And if in this position, white decides to retreat with the knight to save it, after a takes b2 and rook to a1 as the next move, white may lose the game. So that's why they should leave their knight here on e7, hanging, king e7, and play this position. For example, bishop d2, which is definitely in white favor because of a distant passed pawn and a bishop pair. But at the same time, the number of pawns is equal. And potentially, black has some drawing chances in this position. So black didn't notice rook a8 move, they played just b4. After which white played knight c6, bishop d6, and bishop d2. Now there is nothing they can do to save the pawn. That's why they decided just to give up the pawn, but to double rook a8. Well, the position is in white favor, and it's technically winning. It's just a matter of time and a good plan. Bishop a5 to close the diagonal, to close the file. King f8 b4, knight a5, e3 to activate the bishop. So now the bishop comes to f1 and maybe b5. Knight takes, rook takes, king e7, bishop f1, knight goes to d7, king g2, knight e5, rook escapes. So white's plan here is to activate the bishops and then try to advance the b pawn. But it's not so easy. That's why they decided first to prepare for a potential counterplay from black side, because the only thing that black can do in this position is to try somehow counterattack on the king side. And actually it's not easy. And if white is prepared, for example, h3 covers the g4 square, then white has nothing to worry about and can just continue applying their plan on the other side of the board. h5, f4, chasing the knight, knight goes to d7, rook c6, g6, king gets to a better position, then rook c8, king comes to d7. In this position, rook d8, king goes there, bishop b5 was a good move, for example. No, Sakaev didn't play it, he played this move because he was in the time trouble. And after that, black ran out of time. Why? No, I don't know why. It was move number 40, the last move to complete the control, after which extra 30 minutes would be added to black clock. But he ran out of time. He didn't make his next move in time. Same thing happened to me. It was a kind of a complicated position. I had to play move number 40. The position was not in my favor, but was still playable. I was playing against a grandmaster from Bulgaria, and I ran out of time. So, but anyway, I could continue and at least try to fight for a draw in that game. So King d7 was the last move that he wanted to play, but here we realize that it's a winning position anyway. For example, we can improve our position like that. Then rook comes. We are threatening with g5 and rook e8 mate. So f5, rook goes there, and then there is nothing to talk about. Bishop d4, and with two bishops on open diagonals, we definitely win. Okay, fine. So what does this game do? This game illustrates that even if some square is well supported, you should always keep an eye on it and always calculate the tactical strike that your opponent can apply. For example, like it was with c5 square in this position. Okay, I have two more game fragments for you. So the next game is the game between Alexei Shirov and Daniel King from England. So we are not going to analyze the opening. Let's get back. Let's get to the critical moment of this game. So here, for example, bishop c5 was played. Actually, not obligatory move because the bishop wasn't hanging. The c pawn is pinned. So bishop c5. And what do you think white should do in this position? e5. Okay, Rudy, if e5, please explain the idea behind this move. Yeah, so one of the pawns can take. Maybe the d pawn can take. Okay, yes, guys, please calculate the line. So yes, it's definitely a tactical strike on the most secure square. On the most secure square. Well, if the d pawn takes, yes, we can play d6, but the bishop is hanging on e6. Okay, so here we are calculating e5 move. e5. e5, if f takes e5, it's obvious that rook f7 leads to a deadly attack. So d takes e5 should be played, and then Rudy suggested to play d6, but the bishop is hanging. Queen takes the bishop in such a case. So yes, it's a discovered attack, but the bishop is not protected. Any other ideas of what to do after e5, or maybe we shouldn't play e5? What do you think? Rook h2 and mating. So, okay, actually it's not a mate. e5, rook h2, king h2, and you said queen h4, probably, what you consider to be a mate, or maybe rook h8, but bishop h3, and then you realize that the rook was sacrificed for nothing. Queen d3? Carlos, what do you mean? At which moment queen d3, and which queen? White queen or black queen to d3? Okay, rook f6. Okay, rook f6. What's the idea of such a move? King f6. You can't play rook f1. Okay, Carlos, you can't play queen d3 actually. Queen d3, queen takes queen, then one of the rooks takes, but there is a bishop on e6. So it's not a trade, you lose the material. Okay, so while you're thinking, let me provide you with a few tips. It's not actually tips, you may consider them to be tips, but this is how you should think. And of course, intermediate club players understand it. So before you make a move, you should analyze, almost every time before you make a move, you should analyze 3 different moves candidates. For example, in this position, they are like e5, one of them. No, what else? Queen d3, let's say this is the other one. What else maybe? Knight f5 maybe. So knight f5, e5. So we analyze 3 different moves candidates. Our task is to calculate all these lines in the depth that you can. For example, it can be 3-4 moves, and then evaluate the position. The position that you like most means that and you should achieve the position you like most, comparing these 3. And every time when you are going to play a move, you should always expect your opponent to play something. As for him, when he plays a move, when your opponent plays a move, you should ask yourself if there is an idea behind this move, if there is a hidden threat, and try to recognize it. If there is no, then you may continue your plan. But if there is, then you should play something to defend your position first, and only after that you should continue with the plan. Okay, so yeah, Marcel, rook f1 cannot be played. The queen and bishop are there. So let's get back. e5, definitely correct. So what does e5 move do? Actually, e5 joins the queen to the attack. For example, knight f5 in this position looks good, but we have just 2 pieces into the attack, and we are unlikely to succeed. King goes to f8, and what then? But if we join the queen, it should be much better. That's why we sacrifice the pawn to be able to get our queen to f5, or maybe to g6. So if f pawn takes, I believe it's easy. We just play this move. If he goes to g8, queen g6 leads to a checkmate. So he definitely goes there to h6. And then I think we may continue with this move, knight f5. Wait, is it the best option? No, it's not. We continue with this move. He may sacrifice the queen on f4 or play g5, but g5 is a blunder. So, because in this position, we win immediately. Like that. Checkmate. So the f-pawn can't capture. At the same time, he can't ignore that, because we are going to take on f6. f5 is not a good move because knight takes f5 and then a deadly attack. This is what actually almost a similar thing happened. Knight f5 was played. So because if now g takes f5, queen takes f5, and rook g3 first, and then queen f5, and white continues their strong attack. Okay, Marcel, I see what you mean. So that the knight on g3 covers f1, but I'm not sure if this move makes sense right now, because he can just play rook f8 or bishop e7. Okay, fine. So d takes, knight goes to f5. If they don't take the knight but play this move, we can just play knight d4 and attack on f6. Or maybe knight d6 and then capture. So for example, knight d4, then we take this or that pawn. For example, if he plays this move, what do you think we can do? Now bishop f5, now knight f5, but king f8, he repeats the position. No, actually, I'm not sure if we can sacrifice on f6 right now, but we can definitely play this move. And the only defense I see is, no, rook h6 doesn't work, knight f5 will be a fork, so g5, but I don't think it works. So, for example, d6, for example. What do you think? And the queen is trapped. Is it? No, looks like yes, it is. Yeah, d6 looks good. No, actually, here, rook g3 is not important. d6 can be played right now. Okay, so after knight f5, they took rook g3. Check. If the king goes to the h file, the game will be over much quickly. Because from this position, we threaten with two checkmates. One of them is queen g6, the other one is queen h3. Queen f6 is another move that continues the attack. So rook g3, king f8, queen f5, then they played queen f4 with the idea to trade the queens. Queen g6 and rook a7. What do you think white should do to be able to continue the attack? d6? And d6 maybe... No, actually d6 looks good. Let's decide if black has something against it. So d6. What about bishop d6? Actually, because the rook has to cover the back rank. Yeah, no. d6, bishop takes d6. It's a blunder. It won't work. Rook f3. Come on, guys. Rook f3, queen h2 mate. Queen g8. So how do you trade it for two rooks? The rook on a7 is protected by the bishop. So no, it doesn't work. Oh, rook b1. Oh, as for rook b1, I can show you something. Rook b1, rook b7. What do you think? Looks like this b7 rook does a multitask. So bishop f5, but I don't understand what... bishop f5 with the idea to take on f6? Or maybe rook f7 is enough. Okay, so here, Nimish and Anirudh are correct. It's rook h3. Because if this rook is taken, it's a checkmate. And black can't really do anything to save the rook on h8. So they took queen g8, king e7, and in this position, a very important intermediate move, d6, not to allow the king to escape to d6. This square is occupied with the bishop, and then black gets such a checkmate. Right. So Alexei Shirov successfully found it. So in this position, black was sure that e5 is a well-secured spot and e4, e5 means a pawn loss, but actually white didn't focus on pawns in this position. White noticed that black king is standing alone on the king side, almost nobody protects it, and sacrificing the pawn on e5 is a good way to join the queen into the attack. And the attack was deadly. Okay, so there is a question by Carlos. Let me answer it. So you think queen g8 in this position? Wait. So queen g8 in this position? What's the idea of this move? King e7. So rook g7 check. No, the king escaped. Or maybe you thought... No. Queen g8 was played finally, but later when the rook was removed. So, yeah, there was no defense. So, for example, the computer suggests just to sacrifice the queen. Of course, a human player wouldn't do like that because then the position is absolutely losing and there is nothing to talk about. Okay, fine. So we have the last game to analyze. This is quite an old game. Which year it was? Let me check which year it was played. If rook b7, white can't play queen g7 check. No, they can't. Queen g7, rook takes g7. It's not a mate. The king escapes to e7 in that position. Okay, so this is quite an old game played between Rashid Nejmedinov versus Leonid Shamkovich. It was played in 1957. So can you imagine? It's almost it's 63 year ago. And again, so yeah, we can quickly go through the opening, but we shouldn't analyze because the theory changed. So it was actually Sicilian defense, which is quite sharp opening. So bishop g5, it's arouse or counter attack. e6, so they transpose to Scheveningen. Queen d2, queen b6. The move that I like to be played against me when I'm white, because the queen on b6 is always the object of the attack. For example, here I would play bishop e3 back and castle to the queen side, but they castle to the king side and played... No, they didn't play bishop e3, but I believe that bishop e3 should be played, forcing the queen to go back because these dark squares are now open and we can occupy it with our pieces. So anyway, h6, bishop f6 also deserves attention and maybe is the best move, because if now bishop takes f6, the d6 is hanging. That's why pawn takes. Bishop h5. So now castle queen side cannot be played. The f7 pawn is hanging. Knight e5 protecting it, but f4 and knight has to go to c4. Queen e2 sacrificing on b2. If, for example, knight now captures on b2, then what do you think white can do? Actually, I don't remember, but maybe... Okay, knight of what? Rook a b1. Rook a b1, then maybe queen c7. Okay, so don't worry. You can watch the recording of this webinar on my YouTube channel. So looks like today we have just a few attendees. Some people missed our webinar. I can't say exactly why. So rook AB1, rook AB1. Then, for example, queen C6 or queen. Then knight can escape to A4. Okay. So queen C7. If rook B2, queen C3. So what do you think? What to play? Knight to D5. E takes D5. I was also thinking about this move, but now I'm not so sure. So knight D5, E takes D5. E takes D5. And what? Okay. So let's ask our engine. It's not the best engine. Of course, it's just deep freeze. Yeah, so they suggest to play either rook f3 or f5, which was a part of the plan, of course. Yeah, so it's just a positional sacrifice. So, for example, rook f3 right now, threatening with rook b1. That makes sense. Okay, fine. So let's get back to the game. So they didn't take. They play rook c8 to secure the c4 square. And f5. Queen e3, offering a trade. Queen g4, of course, we avoid the trade because we want to attack the king, which is weak. King f8 to play rook g8. Rook a e1 attacking the queen. Rook g8. Queen h4, queen g5. Another a trade offer. Queen h3. Now, the b2 cannot be taken, right? If he captures on b2, then what should we do? No, of course, not a3, but we can play something like rook e3. And then queen g7, rook g3 with a strong attack. The queen will be trapped. So that's why he plays knight d2. Knight takes d2, queen takes d2. And then I want to ask you how to continue for white in this position. Rook e3, okay. Who else want to suggest rook e2? Rook e2, queen g5 probably. Okay, g4. I don't think g4 makes sense because it opens the king and bishop c6, for example, with a counterplay for black. No, it's definitely not the move. Marcel, what's the idea of e5? No, this is the move you suggested. Okay, so while you're thinking, let me answer a few questions that I have on YouTube. So yeah, so they are asking for more tips. I actually wrote a book that is devoted to how to self-study chess. This book is full of tips. There are 10 different tips, well explained, and I'm going to release this book very soon. And of course, it's free. You will be able to download it from my website. Okay, so we have also Chinmaya watching the webinar. Please, I kindly recommend you to join the webinar by attending our webinar platform on Click Meeting. And another good question: how to correctly identify the most secured spot? It's a really good question. So first of all, this square should be secured by the enemy pieces. Like for example, in the previous position, there was a e5 square secured with 2 pawns, and we even sacrificed the pawn there to be able to join the queen to the attack. So the best way to recognize if this tactical strike works is to improve your tactical vision first, and then you will be able to find them. So of course it's always a sacrifice, but such a sacrifice leads to a kind of a counterplay for you, and you'll be able to take the advantage. So it should be moves that you can't play, couldn't play before, but can play now because some of the conditions aren't changed in the game. For example, in this position, I can definitely say that this tactical strike was possible only due to this king move. When the king is on f8, it works. When the king is on e8, it doesn't work. However, when the king is on e8, we can simply capture on e6. So that's why I can hardly call king f8 a mistake. Okay, fine. So what do we have? Rudy still suggests c5 as well as Marcel. And here Marcel is again right. Okay, I'll read it. Bishop f7. What's the idea of bishop f7? So I was able to publish the book a few weeks ago, but there was a problem with no, there were a few mistakes, so I'm still doing proofreading. Okay, so let me show you. Of course, bishop f7 doesn't work, but e5 works, and exactly this move was played in the game. And again, it was played because of these 2 pins. So if d captures, then of course rook d1, and there is nothing to talk about. The bishop is hanging. If f captures, then f takes e6. Yes, what? Wait. F takes e6 with the pressure on f7. The bishop can't take. Queen takes e6 and queen f7 and so on. So which move to play? In the game, they played bishop c6. Rook e2, attacking the queen. Queen g5. F takes e6 now. So the g2 is well protected. F takes e6. E takes f6. Bishop takes f6. And now the knight joins the game through the e4 square. So e5 was played not only to take the advantage of open files f and d, but also to get the knight to e4. Of course, in this position, black has no better move but to capture on e4. Rook takes e4, rook takes c2, but wait a sec. There is no checkmate on g2. Yes, black can capture on g2 with a queen or with a rook, but it won't be a checkmate. And now, after rook e6 is played, white is threatening to take a piece on f6, so to gain a piece. Maybe king g7 was a better way to play in this position, but then just rook takes here, queen takes, and queen d3. Now two pieces are hanging. So you see, in this position, we couldn't capture on f6 because of back rank mate, but we could play queen d3, covering the f3 square and also attacking the rook on c2. Then let's say rook d2, but queen g3 check, and then we take the queen because d1 is secured with our bishop. So, but yes, rook f2 was played. You were right. Rook f2, rook e8 check, king g7, rook g8, king g8. Then queen c8 check. Queen c8 was played to secure this square, the c1. This. So if now any move, just take the rook. They take on h5, but come on, the position is absolutely losing. Queen b7 is check, and with equal, even white is one pawn up. Moreover, they have rook versus bishop, absolutely winning position. And then it's just a technique, which was okay for Rashid Nijmedinov, and he successfully won the game. After a few moves, black resigned. Oh, they resigned in this position after bishop g1 because white intended to play h4, and if king comes to g3 to capture, then just rook g6, trade the rook for a bishop, and then promote the f pawn. So the position was absolutely losing. Actually, if I were black, I would resign after queen c8. Let's get back and quickly go through the main ideas. So here, we should be looking for a tactical strike to make our pieces interactive with each other. At the same time, we may notice some discoordination between enemy pieces. For example, that if we open the file, the F file, the king will be quite weak. If we open the D file, they may lose their bishop. So that's why e5 might work. Moreover, e5 allows us to join the knight to the attack. And this is what exactly happened in the game. We opened the files. At the same time, we tried to defend our g2 square, the main weakness in our position. So, okay, rook e3 at which moment? Yeah, as for... Okay, so yes, I think I need to answer. So f takes here, f takes c6, bishop e6, and queen takes c6. The pawn is pinned. Rook e3 before playing e5, but what for? No, rook e3 is possible move, but let's say what if these... Sorry, I didn't mean rook g6. I mean rook g2. What about this move? Then rook d3, right. Sorry. I don't know, I can play anything. Let's say, what can I do? Rook c5, for example, to try to attack the f5 square. So why not? Okay, fine. No, rook d3 is good, actually. So, okay. Rook e3, rook g2. Yeah, rook d3. What's wrong with this move? The best thing, queen c2. Queen c2. No, queen c2 is not working. Queen c2, queen g2, queen d3, rook g1. The game is over. Right? Yes. Oh, bishop d8, queen g8, queen f7. Okay, fine. Thank you guys for attending my webinars. So today unfortunately, just a few people came. And if you like the webinar, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. So you can also suggest the topic for my future webinars. You can email me at tricksofchess@gmail.com. This is my email. You can email me. Yes, I offer one-to-one lessons, and if you want to ask questions about it, please email me on at this email. Or you can also send me a friend request on chess.com and message there. So okay, I'm going to show you. This is my YouTube channel. And this is my chess.com account. And by the end of the webinar, you will be transferred to my website. And of course, so no, for free I only conduct webinars. So one-to-one lessons are paid actually. Okay, yeah, thank you for coming. If you like the webinars, you can invite your friends to join. So the webinars are free, and I'm sure we will extend the number of attendees up to 100. Okay, thank you.